Welcome to Cyber Threat Intel, your go-to source for the latest updates, news, and insights on cyber threats. Our goal is to arm you with the knowledge to protect yourself in the digital age, whether you're a cybersecurity professional or just curious about the threats lurking in the digital shadows. Make sure to subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast listening platform to join us on the front lines of cybersecurity, because in the world of cyber threats, knowledge is power. Welcome. This is Cyber Threat Intel. I'm your host, John Good. This is episode number 59. It's Monday, July 1st, 2024. If this is the first time you're joining the show, glad to see you here. If you're returning from another episode or some other content, glad to see you returning to come get your fix of cyber threat intel. Now, with that being said, if you need to grab a snack or a drink, something to get you through the content, make sure that you go and do that first, and then keep going with the rest of the content. Also, if you want to see the articles that we cover in the episode or other episodes or just some of the other articles that are important reads that don't necessarily make it into the show, head on over to Cyber Threat Intel, again, cyberthreatintel.com, and you'll be able to find the feed and all the information on the website there. So with that being said, remember, this is just a reminder that this week is a holiday in the US on July 4th of July, so there will not be an episode on that day. Just want to give you a heads up so you're aware of that. But with that being said, let's go ahead and hop on over to my screen and hop into the content. All right, so first article, Chicago Children's Hospital says nearly 800,000 affected by January ransomware attack. A prominent children's hospital in Chicago confirmed that almost 800,000 people had sensitive health information leaked during a ransomware attack earlier this year. The Ann and Robert H. Laurie Children's Hospital of Chicago was attacked in January by the Resida ransomware group, which allegedly made more than $3 million from selling data it stole from the hospital. Hackers gained access to the systems between January 26th and 31st. The stolen data included basic information like names, addresses, dates of birth, dates of service, as well as more sensitive information like social security numbers, medical records, prescription information, health claims information, and treatments and procedures received. There's a quote here that says, "We have no indication that the cyber criminals accessed data stored in our electronic health record system, although certain information stored in other Laurie Children's systems was impacted," the hospital explained. Laurie Children's did not pay a ransom. So if you aren't familiar, at least in the United States, and I'm sure other countries as well, but because I live in the United States, I'm a little bit more familiar with the laws and regulations here. We have this thing called HIPAA, which is all about how you store healthcare data, how you protect it, the things that you do to keep that information safe, and then if something were to happen, how you would go about that, how you send out breach notifications, and things of that nature. So there are requirements in place if you want to store that kind of data. And certainly it sounds like some of this information maybe was not encrypted, which is a big no-no with sensitive information. That kind of information should never be stored in the clear because for obvious reasons, that's a bad idea. But that's kind of my first reaction to this is what it sounds like. A lot of times when hackers are able to exfiltrate data, meaning taking data out of a network, and they're able to see it or clearly show that they have that information, a lot of times that's because the information wasn't encrypted. If it was encrypted, they wouldn't maybe even be able to tell exactly what that data is, what the columns in a database are, or things of that nature. So sometimes you can understand more as far as what happened in a breach or if a breach actually did happen, just based on the kind of verification of what exists in that kind of actual data, right? If there is a column called social security numbers and it's in some obscure table or something that is named something completely unrelated, an attacker says they got into your database, into this table, and these are the columns that exist in that table, or these are some of the values that exist in that table, well, then, if that's accurate, then it's pretty clear that they probably got into that data. If they can't identify those kinds of identifiers or that type of information, then maybe they got in there and maybe it's encrypted. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe they weren't able to get in there and they're just claiming that they got in there. We've seen that too. So it's a weird kind of verification process that you can absolutely use to further unravel what actually might have transpired. Don't put it past hackers or ransomware groups or people of that nature, threat actors, to lie or say they got into systems that they didn't get into. That happens all the time, right? We see situations like that happen and kind of play out. And then if they're a ransom group or they're demanding a ransom and you believe them without doing any kind of verification or anything like that, and then you go ahead and give them the money, well, if they never got in there, they just got paid for just basically saying they did something and you not even knowing what's going on. You not having a clue about how to really security probably even, right? If you can't validate that. It also says victims are being given 2 years of identity protection services. The hospital said they are one of many hospitals and health systems across the country facing constantly evolving cybersecurity threats and are working with teams to further enhance their security systems. So hospitals, healthcare providers, things of that nature, they have some unique challenges, especially around things like life support systems or some of these more critical kinds of systems that can't always be patched like a regular operating system. It's not somebody's laptop where you can just go in and just, push out updates and then it's good to go, that kind of thing. Some of these things you may not want to break. And so you have to be really cautious with applying patches, doing the things that the vendors recommend, which again, vendors maybe aren't always the best at keeping things patched, but it's a little bit different kind of scenario. And certainly when human life or safety of people, medical procedures, all those kinds of things, when those are at risk, you want to be a little bit more careful in general. You're just going to put a little bit more care into that than if it is maybe somebody's cell phone or something. It's just how it is. So let's keep moving here. Next article, I don't see it happening. CISA chief dismisses ban on ransomware payments. Jen Easterly, the director of the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, on Thursday poured cold water on suggestions the United States might bring a ban on ransomware payments. There's a quote here. It says, I think within our system in the U.S., just from a practical perspective, I don't see it happening, said Easterly at the Oxford Cyber Forum. So if you aren't familiar with how this has kind of come about or what this is related to, we've seen some countries start to implement these bans on ransom payments or processes in order to get approved to make a ransom payment through the government. So you submit a request to the government saying, I've been attacked. I'm a victim of a ransom attack. I want to make this payment, whatever the case is. But we've seen different countries go about these things in different ways. Australia, really good example, starting to put bans in place to actually pay the ransoms. And so United States certainly does things differently than sometimes than other countries. A lot of countries do things differently than each other. And so I think, honestly, especially how we operate in the United States, the implications of putting some bans or restrictions on people, on companies, saying what you can and can't do is always something that meets a lot of opposition in the United States because kind of built on this idea of having a lot of freedom. And so you'll always see people kind of reject idea of increased regulations, pretty standard. Nobody, especially with things like cybersecurity, it's difficult to start putting barriers in place and restrictions on how people can react and operate their security program. Cybersecurity is hard in general, when you start putting those barriers in place, especially at the government level, government laws, regulations that apply to companies, once you start putting those in place, you're starting to take over some of that responsibility because you are inserting yourself as a step, an intermediary step in the process. And so you've got to have people staffed that can review those requests. You got to have people that are staffed to approve the request. You have people that need to be staffed to do some kind of analysis or assessment on companies. Like there's all these things that start going in place or that are required as governments start to implement things. And that's just with anything. Once they start implementing things or requiring things, there's all those different kinds of steps that have to be in place. And so it is a very costly thing for governments to implement any kind of regulation. Because again, just requiring something also requires somebody to validate or some kind of enforcement check, enforcement step, enforcement authority in place to actually make sure that people are doing it. Because otherwise, what's the point of having a requirement if nobody actually has the authority or the power or the oversight to check to make sure that people are following that? So it's a slippery slope with government for sure. Back to the article, she was interviewed by Ciaran Martin, the former head of the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, who had earlier this year called for a ban on all ransomware payments in a comment article in the Times newspaper. He acknowledged on stage the article had divided opinions, to put it mildly. Again, you're always going to have this clash where any increased regulation from government is going to, there's going to have people that are supporting it. There's going to have people that are opposing it, especially in the United States. Whenever it's taking away freedom or forcing people to do certain things, it's going to cause a lot of, debate. Asked how bad the problem was, Easterly said, "We have done enormous work with our partners to try and reduce ransomware attacks. It's not clear that we've been terribly effective at it, but I will say it's very hard to know, frankly, because there's no baseline. These things are always evolving. We're always trying to figure it out." There's a quote here. It says, "One of the reasons I'm excited about this law we've put in place called the CERCIA, Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act, so it will be mandatory for critical infrastructure owners and operators to report if they have a ransomware attack or a cybersecurity incident," said Easterly. And so especially with critical infrastructure, there's a little bit more leeway. They have a little bit more ability to put requirements in place because those are really important aspects. The power plants, power grid, the water plant system, sanitization systems, all those kinds of things are just a little bit more important to the world or to the country. So there's a little bit more authority behind that. Easterly also praised her staff's pre-ransomware notification initiative, where the agency shares detections from threat researchers with businesses, for instance, of precursor malware. The program is aimed to help businesses try and prevent ransomware attacks from happening, something she said they had managed probably hundreds of times. So coordination of a lot of ransomware attacks and helping the government kind of build profiles on these attack groups is certainly a good thing. I mean, I think at least for the the near future or the future that we can kind of see when we look out, I think it's going to have to be more of a coordination or cooperation between businesses, between the government. I don't see in the United States, at least, this being something that is going to be widespread where they can put some regulations in place around some of this ransomware stuff. Even with things like HIPAA and all of those kinds of things, those certainly have penalties associated to them, but I just don't see us taking the same kind of steps that, for instance, Britain or Australia and some of these other countries are able to take. We just don't operate in the same way. We don't allow the same kind of government intervention in the United States. It's just how it is. Next article, exclusive, HubSpot says it's investigating customer account hacks. Marketing and sales giant HubSpot said on Friday that it's investigating a cybersecurity incident. When reached by TechCrunch on Friday, HubSpot's Chief Information Security Officer, Alyssa Robinson, said in a statement that the company identified a security incident that involved bad actors targeting a limited number of HubSpot customers and attempting to gain unauthorized access to their accounts. And if you don't know who HubSpot is, HubSpot's a US-based company that specializes in customer relationship management, CRM, and marketing automation software, and has a market cap of almost $30 billion as of Friday. So HubSpot is a competitor of platforms like Salesforce, and it's that kind of system, a CRM system. So it stores a lot of your communication with different customers, with businesses that you might interact with, those kinds of things. That's really what that kind of system is used for. It can be used for doing marketing campaigns, marketing efforts, the whole sales process. They're pretty comprehensive platforms. And I bring that up because think about the types of data that you're then storing in those systems. You're storing contact information for people. You're storing communications with those businesses. A lot of times you have invoices or estimates, contracts, all those kinds of things that are stored in these systems. So it can certainly be some sensitive information. Absolutely. So when a platform like this gets breached, it's kind of, it's concerning for you, depending on what you're storing in there. And you have to be careful with what you're storing in these other systems and just aware of the types of data that you're storing in there. That's why whenever you have systems where your users can upload files, it's a very good idea to be very restrictive of the types of data that you can put in there. Also having policies in place, training users. Hey, don't put this type of data in this system. I know you can access this in other systems. We don't want to cross-mingle this data and have this in these other systems where maybe we don't have the right controls in place for that kind of data. These are all things that you have to think about, and you have to think about in your implementation, in your production environment, what people are trained on and how they are trained on that, and how they continue to know that a certain type of data is not good to put in this kind of system because of examples like this. If you put HIPAA healthcare data into HubSpot and it's not secured for HIPAA, that's a bad time now, because now you've got a breach. If it affects your system, if it affects your account, that you've got to now deal with because you put that kind of data in there and you were the one that was responsible for that data. So this one could be interesting. Anytime these CRM systems get breached, there's usually some interesting repercussions or events that evolve from that. So I guess we'll see what happens with that and who was actually hacked. I guess that's one thing that I would definitely be interested to hear about. Next article, U.S. businesses struggle to obtain cyber insurance, lawmakers are told. Experts and industry representatives told lawmakers at a Thursday hearing that U.S. businesses face obstacles in obtaining the cybersecurity insurance they need to hedge against the impact of breaches. The quote here says the terms of exclusions vary widely and are very difficult for many operators, particularly smaller ones, to understand what's covered, Denbow said. Owner-operators would benefit from standardized cyber insurance policy language, definitions, and applications that are simpler and more streamlined. Cyber insurance typically does not cover acts of war, and at a time of cyber operations by states that target critical infrastructure are becoming more common, businesses are questioning whether their insurance policies will cover damages that might be linked to an ongoing conflict, said Matthew McCabe, the managing director of cyber broking at the insurance agency Guy Carpenter and Company. So if you aren't aware of cyber insurance and kind of how that has played out, early on, insurers that provided insurance, you could just go there and get a insurance policy. And obviously, when something is new, how it's written up, the restrictions, the exclusions, all of those kind of things, the disqualifying factors, those are usually not up to par. Either they're too restrictive or they're not restrictive enough. So either, and I guess that's always kind of a conflict with the insurance companies in general, is it always kind of favors one party, and insurance companies certainly make an effort to make it favor them over the individual, just so they can make money, right? It's a business. But with that being said, things have kind of changed, kind of evolved over time. Cyber insurers have become a little bit more aware of cyber insurance and the potential of things like nation state attacks and all of these different things that could happen that could be a little bit more catastrophic, maybe things that they don't necessarily want to cover. And so they've certainly got more strict with the things that are excluded from their policies. And cyber insurance in general is typically very legally correct as far as the verbiage. They try to make it very legally enforceable and defendable in court. So because they don't want to have to pay if it meets certain things that they don't want to pay for. And so when we're talking about a company that goes to look at a policy, this kind of legal speak, if you will, it makes it very difficult for just the normal person to understand. And you might think that you're covered, but in fact, maybe you're not covered. Maybe you're doing something actively that is limiting your coverage, or basically nullifying your coverage, and maybe you don't know that. Maybe you make a certain decision and then that nullifies it. Maybe a certain threat actor that attacks you nullifies your policy. All these different things can certainly be possible, and it's kind of this battle with these cyber insurers because, again, they're trying to make it so they don't necessarily have to always pay. And as the customer, you are hoping that you're covered from a cyber incident. And so it's certainly an unfortunate situation. If you pay for insurance, you're doing all the things that you and your are proper, that you believe are good, that are with the right intent, and then all of a sudden you're making yourself not eligible for your policy or for your claim. The article says the difficulty of modeling cyber attacks and their impact has led to increasing insurance premiums. That's another thing. You're going to have to pay more for premiums, leading some to call for so-called backstop for the market, in which the federal government would step in and guarantee large-scale insurance losses. The quote here says, lack of models to accurately assess risk and lack of consistency in terminology and coverage have created a lot of friction in the cyber insurance market, said Representative Eric Swalwell, a Democrat out of California. These dynamics have created a perfect storm. Demand for cyber insurance has increased, premiums have gone up, and some insurers are reluctant to write policies, so we're in a unique position to bring certainty and stability to the market. So again, insurers are they're concerned with the cyber world, because in the cyber world, even as a cybersecurity practitioner, it can be difficult to even verbalize or articulate the potential of risk, the probability of risk, the likelihood of risk. There's a lot of factors that go into cyber risk, absolutely. If you don't apply this particular patch, what is the percentage or the likelihood that something's going to happen? Is it a 10% chance? Is it a 25% chance? These things are much more difficult to predict than when we're looking at something that's been around forever, like car insurance, house insurance. These things have been around for a while, and they are somewhat more predictable. They have all these models and things that they can predict based on the age of the house or the age of the car, if it's got the right parts, if it's been serviced, whatever, all those kinds of things. The area that you live in, the area, the city, the geographic region, the state, the climate, all of those things help insurers determine premiums for those. They don't have the same kind of thing for cyber insurance. They absolutely do not have that. And I think it's probably going to be a while before we have a very good modeling system for the insurers. So this is something that's going to have to kind of be shored up. I think relatively, soon. It's not going to be today. It's not going to be tomorrow. But I mean, I would hope in the next, I don't know, 10 years. I think it's going to take a while. That's why I say that. But I think going forward, it's something that just has to get fixed. We just can't go 20 years, 30 years without this getting resolved to some extent. Next article, TeamViewer's corporate network was breached in alleged TeamViewer's corporate network was breached in alleged APT hack. The remote access software company TeamViewer is warning that its corporate environment was breached in a cyber attack yesterday with a cybersecurity firm, claiming it was by an APT hacking group. On Wednesday, June 26, 2024, our security team detected an irregularity in TeamViewer's internal corporate IT environment, TeamViewer said in a post to its trust center. We immediately activated our response team and procedures, started investigations together with a team of globally renowned cybersecurity experts, and implemented necessary remediation measures. TeamViewer's internal corporate IT environment is completely independent from the product environment. So I think that's a key thing too, is knowing how your environments are set up. What is isolated from what? Can they talk to each other? Can your test environment talk to your production environment? If so, and it can do it directly, that's probably not a good idea. It's probably a bad situation. But internal corporate network and production environment, the environment that you give to your customers, can that interact with your corporate network where your HR systems are at, your payroll systems are at, your CRM system is at? All of those things, because that separation, and this comes down to things starting just with having a network map, understanding your different networks and how those interact with each other. However, back to the article, however, they say they aim to be transparent. The TeamViewer IT security update page contains the robots meta tag, HTML tag, which prevents the document from being indexed by search engines and thus hard to find. So the robots no index tag, the idea is that these search engines, they have these robots, they call them, where they go out to all these different websites, they crawl the internet, they crawl these websites, and they look for updates in content, they look for new pages, all those kinds of things. So when you add tags like this, it tells those robots, hey, don't index this page, please. And then they don't index it, and then it obviously makes it hard to search for that page, except for when you're on the actual website. It doesn't really tend to affect that because that is different. But if you go to Google and you search for TeamViewer IT security update page, that's the idea. It's not going to be as easy to find from a search engine. An alert from Health ISAC, a community for healthcare professionals to share threat intelligence, also warned today that TeamViewer services were allegedly being actively targeted by the Russian hacking group APT29, also known as Cozy Bear, Nobelium, and Midnight Blizzard. APT29 is a Russian Advanced Persistent Threat Group linked to Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR. The hacking group is known for its cyber espionage abilities and has been linked to numerous attacks over the years, including attacks on Western diplomats and a recent breach of Microsoft's corporate email environment, which we talked about on this show. So, always interesting with TeamViewer. TeamViewer is used for a lot of different things. I think a lot of the scammers use TeamViewer. They get people to download the client and give them access to remotely control their computer. I'm sure there's other softwares out there that they use as well that are like that, but I know TeamViewer has been used a lot by these different groups. So, they have a rocky customer base, I guess, with that. But it's always interesting to see these different softwares that are widely used and that are breached by attackers, and why certain software might be breached over others. That's what threat intelligence is all about. getting that profile built on these different threat actors, and then understanding why they're going after you. Why are they going after TeamViewer? Are they looking for certain kinds of customers? Did TeamViewer make a statement about one of these groups? All those things can drive some of these groups to come after you. So you have to be careful with what you say, especially in public forums when you are operating, especially under a business name. But also as an individual, I think as an individual, unless you have a big following, then it's different, because certainly then if you have a big following, you could irritate them and they could come after you and all those kinds of things. But if you're just a solo person, it may not be as impactful if you have like 5 followers or 5 friends or something. It's just different. So with that being said, that's the last article for today. Again, this is Cyber Threat Intel. I'm your host, John Good. This is episode number 59, and it is Monday, July 1st, 2024. Again, head on over to cyberthreatintel.com, cyberthreatintel.com. You can find all the articles that we cover. And just a reminder, like I told you at the beginning of the show, this week is July 4th, which is a holiday in the United States, which is where I'm at. So we will not have an episode on the 4th, which is coming up here in a few days. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today, and I'll see you in the next one. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cyber Training Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. CybertrainingPro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community, where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today.